Young people went to a nightclub and they walked around with drinks in their hand and they did bad things, and that means we all have to sit down when we go to a public meeting. We're going to look back on this in 20 years' time. I hope we're still laughing, because I'm not laughing right now. Anyway, I probably will get started now, Dee. Thank you. So welcome to Brisbane Community Forum. Welcome to our Candidates Forum. We have thank you for the applause. We have a variety of people here who have put up their hand to try to represent us in George Street. That's cesspool down the end of George Street. They want to go there. Crazy people. But you have to admire them because they really care about the community and they want to have a go. So we are here to help them get their message out at Brisbane Community Forum. The purpose of our meetings is for people to do exactly this, to talk to each other, to communicate with each other, not to just depend on mainstream media or the spin from political parties. Find out things and vote responsibly. That is the main thing. Don't be a donkey voter. Really think about who you're going to vote for and the values that they would represent. If you are not receiving emails from me, the lovely Trudy up at the front desk where you've signed in, there she's waving. She has a list there, you can put your name down there to receive emails and get updates. We have a library. Don't know whether it's here tonight. Yes, it is. Malcolm is here. He has got a library, it's free, and we have a lot of really good information that you can borrow. And of course, we do hope you bring it back for next month. And next meeting, this is important. I'll just change this PowerPoint. This is very important. In the next few days, you'll be getting another email which will have this flyer on there. On the 1st of September, bookings will open for this event. It is a fundraiser for Professor Peter Ridd, who was sacked by James Cook University because he told the truth. Yeah. He sued them for unfair dismissal and he won. They appealed and they won. So now he has to go to the High Court. He has a budget for his legal fund of $730,000. He has raised over $600,000 already, but we are going to try to raise some more. And we're going to do it at the Tingalpa Hotel. Sorry, why did that not stay up? At the Tingalpa Hotel, we can only take about 135 people because of Corona and liquor laws and all that sort of stuff. But the point is we are going to live stream it. We are going to encourage people to do watch parties all over Queensland. And we have a number of organisations that are going to send out information to their members, okay? And we want people to hit that button on the GoFundMe page for Peter Ridd. So more information will come with the email that I send out. The thing is, bookings open on the 1st of September. Only 135 places if you want to go there in person. I would be very, very quick if you want to come along. So you are the privileged ones, you're here at this meeting, so please do Peter a favour, do academic freedom a favour, and turn up to that in 22nd of September next month. Now, the July meeting that we last had, oh, by the way, I'm supposed to sit down because of Corona, so I'll do that now. The other reason is my back hurts, so I will do that now. And hopefully, Dean can still get me on the video. Okay. The last meeting was very well attended. We spoke about ways to spread your message. We had some really good speakers. Lyle Shelton, launch of this book. Susie Holmes, who is also a speaker here tonight, talking about major issues in Ipswich. Chris Green of the Green Shirts Movement, talking about rural and regional people who are rising up
and wanting parliamentarians to take notice of them because they haven't been doing that. So it was really well attended. And then, of course, the highlight, as it always is, our very own in-house researcher, Stuart Gow, we all like Stuart, and the things he tells us about what's happening in America, all the crazy things that are happening in America and all around the world. And he will be also following up on that this evening. So very well attended last month. Okay, does anyone have any comments about the last month or anything you'd like to add to that? No? We must have explained everything. How good is that? As an ex-teacher, I'm pleased about that. I taught you, but you didn't learn. All right, now I am going to do something that's very, very important for any election. Particularly in Australia, we have preferential voting. I'm not going to get into the argument of whether it's good or bad, whether first past the post is better. I'm going to explain an example of preferential voting and what exactly happens, because people do not understand how important your preferences are in preferential voting. So just excuse me a second and then I'll just get started on this very short little presentation, but it's extremely good information. And I really would encourage you to think about who you preference. Do not be a sheeple and just take what the parties tell you to do. You may not like the choice that they have for second or third, or you may like the one that they put last, but you want to put them up higher. Make your own decisions, and that is responsible voting. Okay? So I'll just go on to that. Where is it? So, let's see. There we go, right. Oh, where's the slideshow?
Just doing F5.
Okay, thank you. Right, the critical importance of your preferences, and the message is your vote is your choice. I know you get how to vote cards everywhere, but you think about who you are going to be voting for. We're going to do a case study of Denison in 2010 in the federal election in Tasmania. I don't think that actually exists anymore. It's been taken up with redistribution, but nevertheless, the principle remains the same. ALP had held that seat for 23 years with just the one person, so they were very comfortable with their position in Denison. And he retired, and so they thought, well, we'll just simply hand over to the next person. There were 5 candidates, 4 from parties and just 1 independent. 64,859 formal votes were recorded, and quite a significant number of informal votes were recorded. When you see the result, that could have made quite a difference if people hadn't voted informally and they'd voted a certain way. But anyway, that's the way it happened. The rules of what happens with preferential voting. In that particular seat, 64,859 formal votes were recorded. So the whole amount, that blue bar, would represent that, 100%. To win, you need 50% plus 1 vote to win an absolute majority. They are the official rules. Therefore, you needed 32,430 formal votes to get over the line and win that seat. If no one has an absolute majority in the first count, the candidate with the lowest number is eliminated and their preferences are distributed before a second count, and so on and so on. The count continue until one candidate has an absolute majority. There's always going to be 2 left in the end, but one of them will have more than the others. So the end result, Andrew Wilkie, the independent, 4 parties stood. An independent won this, and he was elected. But his primary vote was only 21.26%. See how short that is of the 100%? That is amazing that he won that. He was 18,642 votes short of that 50%, or 28.74, almost 30% short of outright victory. How on earth did he do that? Well, preferences, that's how he did it. The first count, As expected, Labor seat, comfortable Labor seat, number one, Labor got the majority of the votes. Second came the Liberals. Third was Andrew Wilkie. Fourth was the Greens. And fifth, the Socialist Alliance, I beg your pardon. Okay? That's a fairly normal sort of distribution. So see how far short Andrew Wilkie is. He's even behind the Liberal person on the first count. ALP is only 14.21% short of victory. That's all they had to make up to win this seat. And you'd think it'd be pretty simple. Look at that Greens percentage there. Usually they go hand in hand with ALP, but not necessarily. So you would expect that the ALP would get over the line with this one. The second count, because the lowest one was excluded, the Socialist Alliance, their votes went 4 different ways. So you can't predict where people's preferences are going to go. So all 4 of the other people got the advantage from the distribution of those preferences from the Socialist Alliance. Okay, not a lot of difference there because there weren't many votes there to start with. And the ALP is still 13.85% short of victory. The Greens, 19.38, should help them tremendously. But, well, we'll see what happened. The third count. Remember, the lowest one gets eliminated, one by one. The lowest one gets eliminated. So the Greens got eliminated. And they went the 3 ways. Again, not necessarily all going the one way. The knockout blow to the ALP was this particular distribution, because only 7.53% of the Greens, 19.38, went to the ALP. Less than half of the available votes for the Greens went to the ALP. Quite unexpected. Okay, the ALP is still short of victory. They must have been pretty worried by that third count, because that's where they would have expected to just get over the line. And then Wilkie got 10.23% of that 19%. He got almost half of them, that independent. Do remember though, in this instance, he was once a Greens candidate. So he probably had a constituency there in the Greens voters who were still very happy with him. It comes down to they were voting for the person, not the brand. The person, very, very important for thinking voters. So in the fourth count, the Liberals, the last ones, they got excluded, they got distributed, and look at that. The predictable flow of preferences, Wilkie having got that 19.31 of 24.41 from the Liberal preferences, because they would not want to vote ALP, because we all know that Libs and Labs don't like each other. We know that, okay? The ALP only got 5.11% out of some Liberal voters. Not enough to get them over the line. So Wilkie wins by a measly 1.21%. Tiny. And he started out with, 21 something. And he still won that seat. All through preferences. So the points to ponder about this whole situation: you must think about your preferences. Be responsible who you give your preferences to. I know a lot of people object to it. They do the donkey vote, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 down the card. That is very irresponsible. You must think about who would you like to go if your favourite person doesn't get in. Who would be your second favourite, and who's the one, the really important one you really can't stand? Put them last, definitely. The party preference allocation cannot guarantee voter behaviour. Look at the way all those preferences got distributed all over the place in that one, especially your voter behaviour. Preference flows between allied parties cannot be assumed. Voters are most definitely getting more and more sick and tired of career politicians. They want real people. We've got a whole line of them here. These are all real people, okay? And that's why I really admire them, putting their hand up. And the candidates must prove their dedication to the electorate, their bona fides, if you like. Do not waste your vote. The winning margin in Denison was just 787 votes, so the 2,435 informal votes probably would have changed the result, one way or the other. Who knows? But those nearly 2,500 people just threw their vote, their precious vote, they threw it away. Dumb. Really silly. And always, always place the worst candidate, in your opinion, last. So they will be distributed. If you get excluded, the one you don't like will get the value of your votes last. So think very carefully about who's my favourite, who's my least favourite, so they go top and bottom. There's further reading there. You can come and take a photo of that later if you like, but it's on the ECQ website. The example is still there after all these years because it's a really good example of what happens with preferences. And I would urge all of you to consider that in this coming election. There's going to be the usual, full field, as they say, of candidates, but don't just turn up with the pencil in your hand. Think about who you're going to vote for. Be responsible. I really do urge you to do that. So thank you for listening to that, and you can always call me at any time for if you need that explained further. Right, now we'll move on with our program. Now we have the candidate speeches. I'm going to hand over now to my very dear friend, Kevin, Toastmaster extraordinaire, who is going to conduct the candidates' speeches, and he is, I always introduce him as the timing Nazi, right? He's really spot on with the timing. But we will, after that, have a Q&A that you can ask any of them, any questions that you like. So thank you, Kevin. Would you welcome Kevin?
Thank you, Jill. Ladies and gentlemen, can you hear me in the back row?
Yep.
Thank you very much. Now, the rules of the engagement this evening, ladies and gentlemen, will be that each of our speakers, who I've spoken to, has 7 minutes to get it all done in the format we have. About 40 minutes in total, and then we will have a Q&A. So if you do have a question, save it up here, and remember, and we'll have some time after the speakers have had said their piece. There will be a brief slide behind each of the speakers, except our first one, I believe. Our second one. There will be a brief explanatory slide behind each of the speakers. And when they have 1 minute to go, I will be sitting in the front row and they will see my finger say 1 minute to go. Last year we had 9 Senate candidates here who wanted to talk all night, so we applauded them off after 7 minutes. And we'll be doing the same tonight if they get so excited, and we're thankful for them for coming here tonight.
Okay, we just need to get you on the microphone, that's all.
Testing, very good. And each speaker will be sitting right here and talking as I am talking, or we're going to put them up on the stage.
Yeah, so
Wacko.
sit up on the stage so they can actually be seen.
Video.
Rightio. Would you please welcome, ladies and gentlemen, our first speaker tonight, Jim Savage.
I feel like I'm at a Senate inquiry here being questioned. Forgive my shoes, I've got a sore foot, so I wore my comfortable shoes tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Jim Savage and I'm running as an independent in the seat of Lockyer, which is centred around Gatton, which is about 100 k's west of Brisbane. Now, a bit about my history. I've been a party man since I was 23 years old. I joined the National Party when I was a farmer. I was a great supporter of the last true leader we ever had in Queensland, a man by the name of Joh Bjelke-Petersen. And I stayed a loyal, staunch supporter of the Nationals until such time as basically they became a city-centric Liberal Party. And in 1996, the tipping point was with the gun laws. Now, it doesn't matter what your thoughts on the gun policies were, the Nationals had a certain policy on guns and they betrayed their members and folded to John Howard. Now, I spoke to my local member, Kev Lingard, who had been Deputy Premier at one stage, and I said, why are you folding and betraying your membership? And he said, oh, well, Jim, I've had more people complain about this than all the other complaints I've had in the previous 20 years as a Member of Parliament. And I said, well, then why are you doing it? And he said, because the boss has ordered us that we must do it, the boss being John Howard. And I said, John Howard is not your boss. I'm your boss. I voted for you in Beaudesert. I'm your boss. He said, no. He said, sorry, John Howard's the boss here. He will not let go on this one. He will punish us if we do not do as he tells us. So as far as I'm concerned, the Liberal, and then of course they amalgamated with the Liberal Party, and as we all know, the last regional executive member of the Liberal Party, Lawrence Springborg, was sacked recently. The LNP now no longer have a single member of the executive outside Brisbane. So, but anyway, so I never left the National Party. The National Party left me. I stayed true. They left me. So in 1997, I joined One Nation. In fact, I went on to become their president for 11 years. So a more loyal One Nation man you will not get. And I know we have 2 One Nation candidates here today, and I wish them all the best in the next election. However, for me, I found that One Nation's leadership had betrayed our membership. They would not vote in support of traditional marriage, which is a policy we've had since 2001. They voted against tax cuts for the lower and middle income earners, a policy which has always been a strong One Nation policy. We changed policy on the Acland coal mine because Alan Jones threatened One Nation with adverse publicity on his radio just before the 2017 election. So we flipped on that policy and went from supporting Acland to not supporting it. So basically, I've had a gut full of parties, so I'm now an independent. Now, the Labor Party, thank you, the Labor Party, who have been running the state for all of the last 30 years, but 2, I believe, the Campbell-Newman years, have a gender policy. They have the sex change laws, which there was a new law passed, the Gay Conversion Therapy Bill, which was passed this week, and of course full-term abortion. All of these things we have known that Labor were going to do. In the last state election, we knew that Labor were going to bring in full-term abortion if they were re-elected, and that's why I was dirty with One Nation, sorry guys, but One Nation knew that Labor would do this, and yet One Nation voted preferenced against every sitting LNP member, except for 2, I think. And as a result, direct result of those preferences, 7 LNP MPs lost their seats to Labor, and Labor returned with an increased majority. Hence, we got the full-term abortion. So I'm not very happy with that, and that's why I'm no longer part of that party. But I wish the members, I have no problem with the membership, and I have no problem with some of the basic policies, but I have a membership of this ruled by leadership, which I do not agree with. Now, the LNP now, and I will call it the Liberal Party from now on because there is no National Party, it died with Sir Joe. But the LNP, I don't have a particular problem with any of their policies, but what I do have a problem with is what they're not doing. They are not doing anything. They are silent. My local member, an LNP member, said during the abortion bill debate last year, he said, the LNP are not going to kick up a fuss about this. It's such a disgusting bill. The people will rise up. The people will rise up, and Labor will be so astounded by the people's resentment of this bill that they will drop it. Well, the people didn't rise up because they didn't bloody well even know the bill was before Parliament. Most people still don't know we have it. So nobody did anything. It's not the people's job to rise up. It is the opposition's job to rise up. They are lazy, they are comfortable in opposition, and if they don't watch it, they will stay in opposition after the next election in October. We have to have leadership. They have to take a stand on things, and they have to let people know what's going on. Back in the day when Peter Wellington was an independent for Nambour, Peter used to put in the local paper every week what was before Parliament in the next week, what it meant and how he was going to vote on it. Everybody up there knew what was coming before Parliament and knew how their local member was going to vote. He gave them an opportunity to contact him and say, no, I don't want you to do that, or yes, I do want you to do it. But now none of us have a clue. We're all blind because our local MPs don't tell us what's going on. It is their job to tell us because they work for us and they are not doing their job. So, why am I running for independent? I believe you can only represent one boss, and that boss has got to be your electorate. Now, if anybody truly believes that your local member of Parliament will put you before their party, put your hand up. And if you do put your hand up, slap yourself with it until you get some sense, because they will not. The party will always come first. If they upset the party, they will not be endorsed next time and they will lose their job. And one of the other problems with political parties is it only takes big corporations or criminals or developers. They've only got to turn 2 or 3 members of the leadership and they've got the entire party in their pocket. An independent, they're not going to go and bribe and try to get an independent on side. That's one independent out of 93. seats in Parliament. They're not worth it. It's too difficult. You've only got to get 2 or 3 of the leadership of a political party. You've got the whole party in your pocket, and the MPs don't even know it. Members of Parliament of the major parties, they never, ever, ever vote in Parliament. Never. When there's a division, all they've got to do is go into Parliament, put their bum on a seat, and the party whip calls out the vote for them. All they've got to do is be present. I liken political parties to McDonald's. McDonald's is the most successful hamburger chain in Australia. The burgers are crap, but you know what? Their advertising is so good, everybody buys McDonald's hamburgers. Every McDonald's hamburger in every McDonald's shop in Australia is identical. Every single party politician in every single electorate in Australia is identical. Go to an independent cafe, you get a great big juicy burger like this, and that's the difference. Do you want a McDonald's burger or do you want an independent burger? That's the difference between a party MP and an independent. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Jim. And I haven't been to McDonald's, I can tell you, for 20 years. Our second speaker, please welcome Gary Duffy.
Well, thanks everyone for coming, and very passionate speech there by Jim. As far as I go, I'm Gary Duffy and I'm standing as a candidate for One Nation. I come the opposite way to Jim into politics. I stood as an independent, and now I've joined a party. The reason I've joined a party is because you need a combined vote in a parliament to make a difference. If you don't have that combined vote, you're not going to make a difference. The one thing about One Nation listens to the people. I'm out there every day on the road, at this corner, in the park. I've set up the marquee. People come down, they tell me what's going on. Now, in Ipswich, and I'm running for the seat of West Ipswich, in Ipswich you'll know that there was a whole heap of corruption. Now, when that corruption was around, getting rid of the corruption was absolutely an impossible task for an independent to do. So we had to actually make the council sue me so that I could put the evidence in the court so the judge could then put the evidence forward to the CCC. So as an independent, I've been down the road of the independent, and I can tell you that it is an absolutely hard slog. If you put an independent in there, they're going to be Planet Pluto, while everyone else here on Earth here making decisions. And that's how far away you will be as an independent. And I've seen it. I've been with it, and I've all the way through. So I've been that. But what is One Nation? So One Nation is us listening to you, representing you time and time again. There was a part of the One Nation that really stuck in that mould that didn't want to mature. But you have a look at every single One Nation candidate that's standing up today and running for you. You put that person against any other Labor candidate, LNP candidate, Greens candidate. The One Nation candidate is head and shoulders above them. They are known in the community, they've worked in the community, they are doctors, they are business people, they are school teachers, they are people, ex-police officers, they are people who are there to make a difference. They have done the hard road in the community, like myself. Business all my life, always listen to people. Our business went from, in 2003, starting from me working out of the back of a car, driving around Australia. In 2008, Queensland Small Business of the Year. That's passion, and we carry that passion, and every candidate who's running for One Nation has absolute passion. So what we're going to focus on is listening to you, the people in the community. We're going to be focusing on what you want in the community, not what I want, what you want. The people of Ipswich come to me and they said, Gary, we want you to get rid of corruption. We're not going to help you. We're going to stand in the shadows, but we want you to do it. I didn't back off. Not one day did I back off. I carried it right through to the end, and it's well documented how much that affected my health as well as everything else. But we never ever gave up, and I don't give up on people. So look, One Nation is here to serve the people. You have a look at what is happening in Victoria. You have a look at the people losing their rights. Every right is being taken away from them. They don't have a One Nation party down there. They just have Liberal, Nationals and Greens. That's all they've got, or LNP, Labor and Greens. That's all they've got. They don't have someone who's a voice of the people, who's standing up. They don't have Pauline there. They don't have Malcolm there. And you need these people. You need that party there that's the voice of the people there to hold it up. And Pauline was right when she challenged Anastasia the other day. She said, Anastasia, come out and say you're going to make vaccines mandatory. I dare you to say it before an election. Fact is, she's not game to say it. And you have a look at what happened when the Prime Minister said it, and you saw the backlash and he backpedalled straight away. And that's because of what this One Nation party can do. That's the power of being in a party, in the community, representing the combined voice of the community, not just a planet Pluto out in the back of the stratosphere somewhere. And that's what we're all about. So we're about fixing the roads, making sure that things are shovel ready. You come up to me and you say, Gary, there's so many accidents here, it's not working. This should have been upgraded since 1985. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm going to tell you, I'm going to come up and we're going to come up with a solution. Sharon's going to talk about the dumps issue. Everyone knows I'm absolutely against it. I'm so against it that Connie, my wife and I, we put money in the game, we're in the courts and we're financing our own expert witness in the court. That's how passionate we are to stopping that. We put our feet and our money in the courtroom. So, and that's because people come up and said, we need to stop it, and that's what we're doing. So we're for you. We're for all the people. And if we get one toxic incinerator in Ipswich, there will be 10 more in Queensland. We've got to stop it right at the button. The ACT have banned incinerators due to health reasons. Western Sydney banned incinerators due to health reasons. Hume Council banned incinerators because of health reasons. Ipswich incinerator goes to the ALP who put it towards the Coordinator General. Coordinator General is to assess the environment impact study put to them by the company. If they get a tick of approval for the council to reject it, then that will be, that'll definitely go to court. Now, one thing I want you to remember is when you go to vote, have a think about policies. There are some policies you don't agree with. There are policies you agree with. Vote for the person who has the policies you agree with and make that vote on that paper, because that's what you need to vote. If you say, I don't agree with that, so I'm not going to vote, have a look and make a vote count and work out where they sit with you and how they represent you. So look, thanks very much, and thank you very much for the invite, and have a good evening. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gary. Please welcome our next speaker, Sharon Bell.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Sharon Bell. I'm the One Nation candidate for the Bundamba electorate. I've been living in the Bundamba electorate for just over 20 years. I've been working in civil engineering or the construction industry over that past 20 years. I have 3 children that I've raised and 3 grandchildren. My eldest daughter, she's a single parent of her 3 children. My second daughter, she's a registered nurse for mental health. And my son, he's in the ADF and he's based up in Darwin. I stood in the by-election for Bundamba and coming second with over 40% of the votes. So that gives me encouragement and confidence that the people in Bundamba are ready for change. I'm just going to talk about One Nation's policies. as Gary was saying, in Ipswich is a big issue with the Labor state government wanting to turn Ipswich into Tipswich. There's the super dumps and also the toxic waste to energy incinerator out at Swanbank by Ramondis. Labor cares more about the waste companies and the donations that they give to them than they do about the people in Ipswich's health. One Nation wish to encourage people to recycle and re-educate our community and businesses to steer away from one-off use. The residents of Ipswich are happy to deal with their own rubbish, but we do not want to be the dumping ground for other states' rubbish. Our unused mine sites are meant to be rehabilitated, they're not meant to be used for landfill. We want to commence shovel-ready projects like the upgrade to the Cunningham Highway, Mount Crosby intersection and the second Bremer Bridge in Ipswich. The people of Ipswich are sick of Labor dangling the carrot in front of their face. Every time people start to make a bit of noise about these projects, they just put an ad or an article in the QT, our local newspaper, just to shut people up for a little bit longer. We want to create local jobs by bringing manufacturing and industries back to Ipswich. With COVID, we've really noticed that Australia has been too interdependent on the rest of the world for food, clothing and so on. You can't really go even to Kmart, Big W, whatever, everything seems to be made in China these days. It's like, can't Australia make our own clothes? This will bring, before COVID, Ipswich unemployment rate was 7.5%. The average for Queensland was 6.5%, so even before COVID, our unemployment rate was unacceptable, and it's now sitting at around 10%. One Nation want to introduce our 10-point plan to reform education in our schools. We want to get back to the basics of maths, English and science and abolish Queensland Respectful Relationships, which was called Safe Schools program. Instead of, we want to introduce instead a basic sex education lesson which informs young adults of STDs and forms of protection like they used to be. If you'd like to know more about our 10-point plan for education, I have brochures up the back on the table. We also want to introduce a 10-point plan to reform law and order and also to reform youth justice policies. Labor seems to have a catch and release mentality, and I think we're all sick of that. One Nation would rebadge our police service as the Queensland Police Force, legislate a Queensland Sex Offenders Public Register and website, build additional prisons and extend 14 existing facilities, also better resource our Queensland 131 magistrate courts and increase magistrate numbers. Once again, I have our policy up the back on those two issues as well. One Nation's Right for Life policy is the first of its kind in Australia and will roll back Labor's up until birth abortion bill. This has been endorsed by the Catholic leader and Cherish Life Queensland in recent weeks. We also want to build new drug rehabilitation facilities which will be funded by the proceeds of drug-related crimes. Our government must realise we cannot keep throwing money at mental health. We must fix the problems that are causing mental health. We want to lower the cost of living expenses. This will be done by building base load coal-fired power stations that will lower energy bills and reduce energy costs to small to medium-sized businesses. And we also will make sure, if LNP win the election, to build a hybrid Bradford water scheme, because this has been one of One Nation's policies for many years. This will increase jobs and bring back life to the outback whilst drought-proofing Ipswich and the rest of Queensland. Sadly, in the federal Senate, the major parties have voted against One Nation's plan time after time. Establish a buy local, support local state government strategy that will boost local business and industry, which Labor haven't been doing. They've been awarding contracts to overseas, China, France, so on, even now Mullany dairies missed out. I think they're about to sign up our gas pipeline too with an overseas company rather than an Australian company. Why I became a candidate for One Nation? Like most people, I was busy raising my children, working full-time, taking kids to sports. Once I had more time on my hands, I realised that so many things had changed over the past few decades. The things that concern me is industries and manufacturing had disappeared, and most things were made in China or other Asian countries. This destroyed our blue-collar jobs, which in turn, over time, has created long-term unemployment, leading to depression, family breakdown, drugs, alcohol addictions, crime, domestic violence, mental health issues and suicide. Until COVID hit town and took our attention away from more important matters like our farmers, who were being looked at as the enemy and not as the people who provided us with food we ate and the clothes we wore. People were storming our farmers' land, terrorising them. Our farmers were being deprived water rights, even though paying high prices for water allocation. Our dairy farmers were dropping like flies, that it was no longer viable for them to produce milk, as it cost more to produce than they made. Farmers' property rights were being taken away. They no longer could use the land the way they used to. Our education system was in decline, our curriculum was overloaded, God was taken out of our schools and replaced with politics and gender-fluid indoctrination. Our resources were being sold offshore only for us to buy back the finished product, as it was cheaper to send offshore to be manufactured than it was to be made in Australia. Our energy prices went through the roof and our elderly could no longer afford to heat or cool their homes. We went from the lowest cost in electricity in the world to the highest. We stopped building dams, even though our population has doubled over the past couple of decades. If I'm elected as the new member for Bundamba, I pledge to be the servant to the people and will do the will of the people. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon. The timing Nazi has struck.
That's right.
Oh boy.
I'm an old Ipswich, not born and bred. I'm first generation Brisbane, but my grandparents and great-grandparents settled there in about 1860, 1870 and established all the potteries up there. So
Oh, really?
I'm well familiar with Ipswich. It's a wonderful place. We wish you well.
Thank you.
Please welcome our next speaker, Michelle Buck.
Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me here today, Jewel. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Michelle Marr. I'm a mum of 3. My little daughter, 8-year-old, is just there. And I'm passionate about natural health and freedom of choice for everyone, with no exception. My father was a freedom fighter in the 1956 Hungarian Revolution, and I was brought up always to stand for principle, honesty, integrity, and to have a concern for the well-being of others. I'm standing as a candidate for the Informed Medical Options Party in the Redlands because the party's ethics and morals are very much aligned to mine. In a time when we are slowly seeing our rights removed and we have witnessed more of a push to take away the sovereignty of our own bodies, first with the no jab, no play policies for our children, and now discussion of a new fast-tracked COVID vaccine, which could be linked to no jab, no pay, no jab, no travel, no jab, no welfare, etc. The mainstream news reported yesterday that the Oxford University vaccine, which Scott Morrison has stated will be as mandatory as can possibly be for all Australians, and then backtracked due to the backlash, has been developed from a kidney cell line which has been taken from a human fetus, which is actually a similar process for some other childhood vaccines. The company manufacturing it, UK-based AstraZeneca, has a known fraudulent past. One example, they had to pay out over $1 billion for promoting a drug called Seroquel to be used for children, although it had never been proved for use with children in that age group. This company has requested legal immunity for this vaccine. Is this a company that we can trust to vaccinate all adults and all children in Queensland. We at IMOP believe not. With a COVID death rate in Queensland at 6 out of a total of 5 million people, that's 0.00000012 of the population. This cannot be mandated, and we will support your right to choose. Contrary to the government's claims, herd immunity cannot be achieved through vaccines, and vaccines carry a risk of injury. And thus, it is essential that every family is given the option to make their own individual informed decisions. It has never been more important to stand up and speak out and to vote in a party which deeply cares about your choices. We're concerned about the overreach from our Queensland government, and this has become more and more evident over the last 6 months. We are your voice for choice. We reject bullying, coercion, and intimidation from our government. We support government transparency, freedom of choice, a clean environment for all, including access for everyone to non-GMO food, non-fluoridated water, as fluoride is a neurotoxin, no forced medication, including vaccines, and the promotion and encouragement of organic food and chemical-free farming. We would demand truly independent health research and safety studies for all medication and vaccines, and we will insist on mandatory reporting of all vaccine and drug adverse reactions. One size does not fit all for any medication or any medical procedure, and all individuals and families have a right to all the data to make an informed decision. We at IMOP will advocate for you. We will defend people's rights to the use of traditional and natural therapies, and will advocate for drug-free and midwife-assisted births. I have always said the medical system is extremely important in many ways, trauma being one of them, where they are brilliant. However, with 50% of Australians having some form of chronic illness, according to Ben Harris, a health expert at Victoria University's Mitchell Institute, changes need to be made. Hence why IMOP wishes to be proactive in promoting the use of preventative natural methods and improved education in these areas. We support homeschooling, and we will offer more support to those parents who choose this path. We will demand transparency from the government and the media, and will push for the damaging censorship of information to be stopped, because at the moment we're all being censored and we're not getting this other side of the story. We will be a voice for you. We will conduct an independent review of the impact of approved pesticides and insecticides on the environment, and lobby the government to remove, over time, chemicals which have a detrimental effect on the environment, including glyphosate and Roundup, which has been proved in multiple court cases to cause cancer. We will review practices which negatively impact our environment and our wildlife, including the runoff of contaminants which are poisoning our marine ecosystems. We will insist on independent health and safety studies on 5G and hope to stop the rollout while these are being carried out. We encourage and support small businesses in our local area because we know this is an integral part of how to keep communities united. The well-being of Queenslanders is of paramount importance to us. We are your voice for choice in the future. Vote One IMOP on 31st of October 2020 for a healthier and happier Queensland. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Michelle. As I always say, follow the money. Please welcome our final speaker tonight, Susie Holmes.
Oh dear. My speech is way. I'm just looking through it and very similar. It's huge, and I don't know if I need more than 7 minutes. I think I need about 20, but no, sorry. Okay, here we go. Okay, thank you for coming tonight and taking an interest in our politics, because it all is very important tonight for our future and for our grandchildren's future. We are at a critical time, and it is very important that everything that we get informed with to help educate others so what is going on in our communities. Okay, as you all know, my name is Susie Holmes, and I'm a small business operator in the health sector. I'm standing as an independent for Ipswich, a seat that is has always been, well, just about, Labor for years. Unfortunately, when people continue to vote the same way, you're going to get the same results. And as you know, Labor has kept Ipswich for a very, very long time, and they've become very complacent, and they have taken us all for granted. Sharon, all of us here can vouch for that. I chose to stand as an independent because I want to break the cycle in Ipswich, and also because I want to wholeheartedly represent the issues that my region faces without having a political party heavyweights and faceless men and women telling me what I can and can't say, or telling me what I can and can't do. I know this very well. I was once an LNP member, and I was once an LNP candidate for Ipswich. I stood up to the hierarchy because they weren't prepared to do anything for Ipswich, as they knew that they wouldn't be winning the following election, and they just don't care for the western suburbs. If you go past past Toowong, that's it. They don't give a damn. It doesn't matter if you're Labor or the LNP. The hierarchy in the party all laughed at me and other members of the Ipswich and Ipswich branch when we started to fight for the Bradfield scheme, to drought-proof our state and to save our farmers from being forced to sell up to foreign investors. So what's changed, given the Bradfield scheme is one of the main election promises of the opposition? I'd say nothing, because those people who laughed at us are the same people who are still there and are still members in the state parliament today. It will never change, and that's why it is important for independents to be elected to the crossbench so we can get action on drought and water security. I will never be a political party yes woman, and so that was the end of my time in the LNP. We don't have if elected as a member of the crossbench, I and other independents like Jim have a real chance of holding the balance of power and holding the government accountable for the people of Queensland. We do not have an upper house, and so we have no checks and balances. This is why we need a strong crossbench to keep the bastards honest. As Sharon has mentioned, voters have the same complaints at every election because they elect people who represent parties and not the people. In Ipswich, we have a health crisis that is about to unfold. And I'm not talking about COVID. I'm talking about the toxic, leaking and sometimes burning rubbish dumps that have been allowed to take over Ipswich, and now the government wants to build an incinerator as well. The State Labor member for Ipswich has remained silent over this unfolding health crisis. Why? Because the government simply is more concerned about getting their hands on the money that these big waste companies bring. Up to 2017, both sides have received $500,000 in donations. So forget about voting for either of them. Well, I say that we cannot put a price on our health. Ipswich is having a population and housing boom, and it will be the next big city of Queensland. Yet Ipswich residents will be forced to live next door to uncontained asbestos and other hazardous chemicals, including toxic PFAS, firefighting foam that has been linked to cancer and even deaths in other parts of Australia. The left scream about saving the environment, but are happy for Ipswich environment to be ruined. Aren't they just hypocrites? There are currently 7 dumps operating with another one in the works. When the stench and health concerns get worse, what will happen to everyone's property prices? When the banks devour these properties, will mortgages be called in? Will people lose their homes? Waste from New South Wales and even Papua New Guinea is being dumped in Ipswich, but that's not even the worst. Recently, I think we've all seen the large part of Beirut explode and be flattened with great loss of life, thousands of injuries and around 300 homeless. The cause of this explosion is said to be from a store of ammonium nitrate, which caught on fire. Well, guess what? Hooray, Ipswich! Stored in Ipswich Sun Mining, with approval by the state government, is 500 tonnes of ammonium nitrate that sits there. This is equivalent to 160 tonnes of TNT, and residents are concerned that one day a Beirut explosion could occur in their backyard. It is stored in close proximity to the residential areas of Collingwood Park, Riverview, Dinmore, Bundamba and Blackstone, and given the distance has the capacity to wipe these areas out if an accident occurred or a fire is deliberately lit. Okay, 1 more minute. Okay, let me just... okay. Sorry. With COVID, with all the... with COVID and all the lockdowns, so that we can decide for ourselves whether it has truly been worth it. We are seeing suicides, people being forced apart from their loved ones, businesses going broke, more financial stress at home and domestic violence, increased calls to Kids Helpline, the interrupted education of our children, state Labor cozying up to Bill, not a Dr. Gates, because he's donating millions to the University of Queensland. Politicians in our government must stop following the money and doing what is right for all of us. They're true bosses. I will therefore fight for these fundamental human rights if elected to the crossbench. Sorry. Hang on. How much more? Okay. Small businesses are the biggest employers of people, but many Queensland businesses have shut down and others are going to the wall, despite government propping up. Okay.
It's all good. Thank you, Susie. And, keep the mongrels honest, as you said. Now, we have a surprise speaker. I've been passed a card, ladies and gentlemen. And for the next 5 minutes, would you please welcome our final speaker, Kim Miller from Waterford, One Nation candidate.
Thank you, everyone. I was late, and Jewel had asked me a few days ago to attend, and I turned up late, and I wasn't aware that we were speaking, so I just asked for 5 minutes. I'm standing for Waterford. I was born and bred in Western Queensland, a little town called Tambo. We had a hospital, but I had to get born in Blackall because we never had a doctor. And then I got christened Church of England because whatever priest came that Sunday was what you got christened. So my brother's a Lutheran, my sister's a Catholic. So, but I went off to a churchy at boarding school, churchy, and I grew up with a Christian Sunday school in a little country town. My grandfather was an artesian well driller. He used to go out and divine all his holes and drill water for properties. And I grew up with him, and he taught me how to drive and shoot from when I was a kid. And like Jim, I was a Joe man right up until the gun laws, and because I grew up with guns too. And Howard Hobbs, our local member, I went to him and said, Howard, what's going on? How many people have you had support the guns? No, none. How many against it? Thousands. Why are you doing it? Because that's the party line. So I stopped supporting him. And then now I've been sick of throwing pillows at the TV, and it cost me a fortune in TVs. And so I stood last time for Waterford, and I got 40% of the vote. Now, the reason I stood for One Nation, is because I have seen how good this state can be, and I've seen what it is today, and it's chalk and cheese. We've just gone downhill like that to the point where $100 billion in debt, and we pay $9 million a day just in interest. Now, Palaszczuk stands up and speaks, we've just spent $65 million building a new school like she's a hero. That's 9 days of interest. If we didn't have $100 billion debt, that's how much further we'd be ahead. I've been married for 32 years, 4 children. The oldest one has been a soldier. He's been 8 years in Iraq and Afghanistan. He's stopped now. His mother was having heart attacks every week. He's out of there, he's at home. I've got another son who's a diesel mechanic, a son who's a plumber, and my daughter is a lawyer, and she does workplace law for people who have been unfairly treated. So I'm, like I said, I'm 63 years old. I'm not a career politician, I haven't got enough time left. So, so I intend to try and make a difference. That's why I'm standing. Now, we've got to do something. Palaszczuk is going to make this up-and-coming election a referendum on, and the only thing she's got to stand on is to stand up and say, I'm the only one that can protect you. Now, if anyone in this room thinks that any government that's elected isn't going to protect them, they're wrong. I mean, Palaszczuk can't, the only thing she can stand on is that. She can't stand on a record. I mean, we've had 7 new taxes, we've had rail fails, health fails. The worst of all, child safety fails. That's been disgusting. And my member that I'm fighting against, Shannon Fenneman, was the child safety minister in the Talia Palmer case and the Mason Lee case. And you know what? They were the biggest failures of child safety, and she would not put her hand up and accept responsibility. They keep passing it off onto a inquiry, so they don't have to answer questions about it. So she did so badly in child safety that after the election they made her the employment minister and skills minister. Well, how's employment going? Sharon, I'll correct you, the latest unemployment figures in Queensland are 12.1% and still going. And when we had these high unemployment figures, Shannon Fenneman's skiing around the slopes of Whistler and failing to declare that she's getting free accommodation over there while everyone's on the dole. And we've got 20% youth unemployment, and she's also the employment minister in Waterford. I mean, another total fail. And we've got integrity fails. We've had Mango Bailey with all his emails employing people that the unions are sending referrals to his private email. He got investigated. Trad's been investigated. And, you know, look, if anyone here thinks that they passed the pub test, you know, anyway. The economy, like I said, $100 billion in debt and still going. We've had health fails, IT failures. It's just unbelievable. We've got to get rid of this government. Yeah. So that's why I'm on Nation.
Thank you, Kim, and a big thank you to your son for his service in Iraq, by the way. Well done. In closing with all of our speakers tonight, ladies and gentlemen, would you please welcome, thank them again. Welcome them and thank them. Thank you so much. Normally at this point in time, I'd be running around the audience and asking questions, but we have to stay in our place. I'm going to suggest, if we are going to ask some questions, please stand up in your seat, speak in a very loud voice, ask a very short question, Joe, I know you. Ask a very short question, I will repeat it so that we can hear, the crowd can hear. So what's your question and who is it to?
I would like all the candidates to indicate who they will preference if there is a policy of preferencing. I know that.
Gotcha. So one at a time. We'll go from go from this end to this end. Thank you, Joe. Well done.
Joe, as you know, I'm running as an independent. My policy will be an open ticket. It will be vote one Jim Savage, the rest will be left blank. Obviously, anyone who's going to vote for me will be putting Greens and Labor last. So that's a given. But I do not want to be labelled by one side or the other as having done a deal with somebody, which is what they'll always say. You guys are cop. It doesn't matter who you preference. Somebody, Liberals always say, I vote for One Nation's a vote for Labor. Labor will say, I vote for One Nation's a vote for Liberal. They say it to everybody, every minor party. There will be a concerted campaign against minors and independents. There always is. And they always say, if you vote them, you vote for the other guys. Well, that's absolute crap. But I'm going to not give them that opportunity. I'm going to have a blank ticket.
Thanks for that. Fortunately, there's only two candidates in my division at the moment, and that's the Labor and myself. So that's easy.
Labor last.
At this stage, there's, I think, 4 candidates, One Nation, LNP, Labor and Greens. We'll be putting Labor and Greens last. Depends if there's any independents, but people have to realise they do own their own preferences. Yeah. You don't have to follow a how to vote card. So please remember that. You own your own preferences. Yeah.
I'm completely new to politics, so I'm even learning how to do the electoral. But I really liked what Jim said, and I think I'll be going along that way of thinking as well.
As an independent, I'm not going to favour any of the two major parties. I've had issues with both, so people can put whoever they want after me. So, and at the end of the day, I have to work with one or the other, whoever gets in. So, yeah.
Thank you for all answering honestly. And the guy in the fluoro shirt. Big boys, please. Your question, sir.
My question is to the Sergeant at Arms. I'm sorry, I didn't think I'd make it tonight. My name is Jared Worth, and I'll be running as a candidate for the INOP party here from this soil of the Mansfield Division. I was wondering if I'd be allowed to have a few minutes to speak as well.
Sorry, there's no time. I'm sorry.
We have another keynote speaker coming up at 8 o'clock, so we're pushed for time. We'd like to get as many questions through as we can in the time available that we promised to the audience, but please feel free to hang around and we will quiz you afterwards. There'll be some people here who would love to know. The lady with the hand up here, what's your question, please? Big voice and I'll repeat it.
Where you can vote just one, is there anything against just putting one and doing no preferences?
Yes.
Did everybody hear that question? Yes, good. Who's going to answer that? Over here.
Yes, if you do that, it's an informal vote. If you do that, it's an informal vote and your vote won't count. We have...
I know there's cases where they say you can just put one.
No, I'm sorry, that's not true. We have compulsory preferential voting in Queensland state elections, which means you must fill in every square. And the trouble is some people have a preferred candidate and they hate everybody else and they say, bugger it, I'm going to vote for John Smith and nobody else. Well, unfortunately, John Smith does not get that vote. It's considered an informal vote. You must fill in every square, that's the law. If you do not, your vote will not count.
That's right, only the local collect elections.
Thank you for the question and the answer. We have 5 more minutes of question and answer, folks. This gentleman here standing up, big loud voice, what's your question?
Yeah, my question is to Jim, and I disagree with you, Jim, about the Labor and the Greens in your electorate of Lockyer. And I'm a former journalist, so I'm just going to cut to the chase. the current member of LNP member for Lockyer, Jim McDonald's been before the CCC 5 times. I want you to say, what drug dealing activities has he been up to in recent times, and is he going to be exposed before the election?
Interesting question. Let's go with this one.
Look, I mean, that's ridiculous. You expect me to answer that question. I will say, like everybody else, I've heard the rumours. We've all heard the rumours. I know he was before the CCC in 2018, being investigated on 3 issues. One was drug dealing, the other was organised crime, and the other was a botched murder investigation into a young man called Daryl Simons. 2 of those issues were dismissed by the CCC. The third one, and I don't know which one the third one was, they didn't say, was referred back to the police department, which means nothing's going to happen. The police will not investigate. Jim McDonald, for those who don't know, the sitting LNP member, was the senior sergeant there for 23 years. So I'm well aware of the accusations you're making, and I've heard them myself, but I can't say anything else, or I'll be spending all my money fighting a law case rather than on my campaign.
Thank you for your answer. Thank you for your question. All I will say is no comment. Do we have another question? Michael, your question, big loud voice.
This is to all of the candidates. What is your position on the Bradfield scheme, and how will you return the state to prosperity? Furthermore, will you, if you hold the balance of power, compel the next government to withdraw bad policy?
That's 3 questions.
Sounds like at least 2 questions there, but we'll go with the Bradfield one.
Back in about 2001, when I was on the policy committee of One Nation, we brought in a policy of supporting the Bradfield scheme. Now, in 2016, I brought it back in again, insisted that Pauline adopt it. She called it the Bradford scheme, but she eventually agreed to go along with it. I will say this, everybody, the Labor, the Liberals, everybody is saying, One Nation, we will adopt the new Bradfield scheme. It is not new. It was brought in 1933 by Professor John Bradfield. It is not new. And I think most people probably don't even know what the PrEP plan is, but I've been pushing it for 20 years. I still support it. In the post-COVID era, we're going to have such massive deaths in this state. We need strong leaders who are going to do big things, not little things, not politics as usual, big things. Big irrigation projects, big mining operations, cheap baseload power. One Nation, I totally agree with that. We need power stations, we need cheap power. We need to open the doors of Queensland and say, you want to build here, you want manufacturing here, you want to mine here, you want to grow crops here, we're open for business, come here. But it's up to government, and we have to have leaders. At the moment, we've just got business as usual. And if we keep voting the same way, we're just going to have the same old stuff. So if you want change, it's up to you.
Yes. Okay, who here knows the ins and outs of the Bradfield scheme? Only a couple. Okay. Let me tell you a little bit about it. In 1986, I put together a draft plan for the Bradfield scheme in a modern format and sent it to all the Labor Party and the LNP. And what it entailed was that the new siphoning schemes and the new pump hydro schemes would be included in that. The new scheme that you're seeing now is really a reflection of what I wrote in 1986. So I know a little bit about it. The Bradfield scheme is to go down into the Upper Dawson. Who knows the Upper Dawson? Okay, what comes from the Upper Dawson? Lots of things. $17 billion in GDP comes out of the Upper Dawson. The Upper Dawson is between Emerald and Roma. There is no train line between Emerald and Roma. You can't do that. To get between Emerald and come back to Roma is 27 hours by train, right? But in that Upper Dawson region, there's $17 billion worth of produce comes out there. There's cattle, there's the biggest citrus farms in Queensland. You've got lots of your mining up there. There's absolutely, yeah, everything is there, right? But it is neglected and you can't get it to port, right? So you can't take it to a port up into the Gladstone port. So what the Bradfield scheme does is when you have a look at it and all the systems down along the way, it would provide enough hydroelectric power for 1.9 million homes. That's every house in Queensland, just off harvesting 5% of our monsoon waters in North Queensland, right? So that's what you're talking about. So what would you do if you put a Bradfield scheme into the Upper Dawson and what could you get out of there? You could put a 400,000 population city there. You would have the first inland city since Canberra. Absolutely. So that's what you got to look at, the bigger picture of what Bradfield scheme will produce for Queensland. So you're talking about an economy progressing far beyond, and that's what I support. Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to add to what Gary has just told you, and also Jim. But as you know, One Nation has been pushing for the Bradfield scheme for many years, and it would open up the rural areas and make the biggest food bowl we could feed, I think 75 million people already, and we'd be able to feed more than that if we opened up these rural areas and bring them back to life again. Because what the Labor government's been doing is destroying our rural areas. So One Nation and independents will make sure that the LNP or the Labor, if we hold the balance of power, we'll make sure that this does happen, and that's the only way it's going to happen. Because they're just telling you what you want to hear, but we will make sure it happens.
Thank you everyone so far. We have one final comment, I believe, from Susie.
I agree with the Bradfield scheme, and as Sharon said, I second her. You need to vote for independents and minor parties like One Nation and others, otherwise you're not going to get the Bradfield scheme. Seriously, because as I said, the people that voted against the Bradfield scheme in the LNP are still members of the establishment, still there. So don't kid yourself. I know there's some LNP people here, but I'm telling you, they're the same ones that voted against it and will vote against it again.
Thank you everybody. Please hang around for our final session tonight. Once again, thank all our speakers for their vision and for their policies and for being here tonight. Thank you. I will pass back to our President Jewel for the next part of the program.
Thank you. Last but definitely not least, Stuart, our resident commentary. Stuart, if you haven't met Stuart before, he is an exceptional researcher, political researcher. He has looked at the geopolitics for years. He knows exactly what is going on. All these strange things that are happening that do not make sense, Stuart will make sense of them. He's been doing that regularly at our meetings, and it's, I dare say, the most popular part of our meetings. Everyone hangs out for what Stuart's got to say. So thank you very much, Stuart, to tell us what's happening in the last month. It's a moving target every day over there, so what can we expect?
Well, thanks, Jules. We've been hearing about the dangers of the establishment, and Australia's not the only place. Am I okay? Australia's not the only place that has an establishment, and my speciality is US politics, having been Australian Vice Consul for a couple of years in San Francisco. And also, I was chair of the Small Business Policy Committee for the LNP for a couple of years as well. So I got to rummage around the halls of power. I was a senior executive in the Queensland government for 12 years, and 4 years in federal government, and I had a short stint at local government, which was a fairly distressing experience, I must say, because I had high expectations of being able to help the community, which sadly I couldn't. So, yeah, keep going. So, at the moment, there is chaos in the world that is clearly by design. It's by design of the global establishment to just to cover, as usual, a currency reset. So every 40 years or so, the currency needs resetting because it's a debt-based system. And everyone here is probably up to their eyeballs like me in debt. So the system has to be cleaned out. Usually they have a war, and they've been rummaging for a war with China, with Iran, anyone, North Korea, anyone. This time Trump came in and spoilt their plans for war. He's, peace has broken out around the world. Not that you hear it in the media, but he's, withdrawing troops all around the place. And so they've gone with the COVID virus instead. So that's the plan. Ramifications of that, small business has been decimated. Everyone's buying their goods now, Amazon and eBay. So the big global companies are favoured now. I used to say to the kids, wait till the ships stop coming, and they have stopped coming now. So we're in serious trouble. Here we are. So, on the other hand, it appears that the Trump administration has anticipated a COVID or a war, and happily for us, it does appear, if you listen to the Truther channels, which I spend every day watching, as many of you here do too, it appears that they've put countermeasures in place. So they're busily going around arresting people in the United States, so arresting the pedophile networks, which sadly run the world, when I say run the world, run government, run the churches at the senior levels, and the Royal Commission has opened that right up, teaching the charities, etc., etc. It's a horrible, horrible place, but there'll be more of that coming out over the next few months to a year, so don't just take my word for it. It's rolling out now, so they're being arrested. There has been, excuse me, no. Yeah, so out of order, chaos. Trump appears to be playing along with it as a cover for reforms. So for the, as I said, for the arrests and the inquiries, etc., they're rolling out. A little history lesson. I'm researching the history of the world according to YouTube at the moment, and I hope to give a presentation early next year on that. But this is a little snap preview. From what I can see, the global establishments come from ancient Mesopotamian civilization, Sumeria, Babylon, where they worship Baal and sacrifice children. They also invented usury, money lending, which we're all victims of now. That became, when Babylon fell apart, they moved up to Phoenicia, which is now Lebanon. And then moved into the Roman Empire when the Roman Empire took over Phoenicia, and you can see how big their empire was from 2500 BC right through to the present. And then, so the Roman Empire, the Phoenicians moved into Rome, into Venice, merchants of Venice, the Venice bankers, and actually became the Roman Empire. So they were Phoenicians, and originally they were Iranians called Aryans. So Iranians, Iraq. It's very interesting. They've taken their wicked ways with them, their dark magic from Harry Potter. There's good magic and there's bad magic. They follow the bad magic, and part of that bad magic is usury, which is interest on debt, which we're all suffering from, as I say. So they're the guys that have moved into the banking system, into politics, etc., etc., run the drug trade, the child smuggling. I like to look at it, being a simple lawyer, I like to look at it very simply. There's chaos on the one part, Siegfried, you'll remember, and on the right is Get Smart and that lovely 99 who I'm still in love with. And that rings very well, very clear. What he said was, if only they used, their whatever for goodness instead of evil. And that's what's happening at the moment. The 5G coming out, Trump's saying we can use it for good. And hopefully he's taken over the technology, he's kicked Huawei out. So hopefully it's good technology now, clean technology, but we don't know. And there's a myriad of things. The internet can be used for good, it can be used for tracking us, every move we make in our data, big data. So go with Get Smart. So people are taking COVID very seriously, and around the world, and it's kind of a good thing in a way. The worse things get, the better they get. you can't wake people up unless there's a crunch, unless there's a crisis. That's what I learned in government. There has to be a crisis. Peter Beattie was very good at saying, there's a health crisis. IBM have stuffed up the health software system. I'll fix it. It'll cost $2 billion, but I'll fix it, you know. We'll need to employ 65,000 new public servants, but I'll fix it. So, needs to be a crisis, and people are starting to wake up. Everyone here is awake. Okay, so this is what we're here for. So what's happening with the criminal investigation? So on the left, and those of you who were here last time, I'll just repeat this very quickly, but the Southern District of New York, the top left, the attorney has been replaced by Trump about 6 weeks ago. A couple of days after that, Ghislaine Maxwell was arrested. So that prosecutor, who was appointed by Obama, was a roadblock for several key inquiries under the Obama government of corruption. On the left, so Epstein and Maxwell, Mossad, CIA agents blackmailing Washington politicians and Hollywood. That's why they're all such idiots, because they're blackmailed. I suspect the same is happening in Australia, but I've got no evidence except the various royal commissions and the ones that have made, politicians that have made mistakes and actually been arrested, you know, picking up kids in toilets over the years. So there's a good guess that it is happening here too. The Wiener laptops, that's 60,000 Hillary Clinton emails, plus various videos that some of you may have seen on the dark net. I have, they're disgusting, of Hillary abusing children, allegedly. And the Clinton Foundation, used as a slush fund. Australia, of course, contributed tens of millions of dollars to various Clinton funds through AusAid. Where did the money go? Ukraine Gate, that's the big one. Ukraine's the centre of corruption in Europe. That's a child smuggling centre, arms smuggling centre, drug smuggling centre, and the Bidens and various other politicians, kids, everyone had their snouts in the trough, were siphoning US aid money to Ukraine, and then it was coming back through various laundering, methods through Malta, etc., back to the Democratic politicians and Republicans as well. So they all have their snouts in the trough. That's why Trump came in on a drain the swamp, and he's doing it. He's draining it. Okay, so in the red are all the people that are corrupt in Washington, pretty much everyone. Hollywood has been smashed, organised sport has been smashed, all these people kneeling, and the politicians come out, oh, I'm stuck in my $1 million mansion, oh, I don't want to go for a swim, I've had a swim already today, what am I going to do? Oh, you poor darlings. So they're coming out with these really weird videos, and it appears it's because they can't get their drugs, which is adrenochrome from the children, from tortured children, the adrenochrome, which keeps them young. Some of them have started looking very old very quickly. I know it's shocking, but do your own research. That's what it's all about. So Trump is basically dismantling. He's come in to dismantle the pedophile networks around the world, including in Australia, and there have been lots of arrests in Australia. They just don't get in the media, or they're in for one day. Thousands of people have been arrested around the world for pedophilia. So God bless Trump. Blue box is all the crimes. I won't go through them. They're self-evident. And what he has done is he's brought in the death penalty. He's tied up the military tribunal regulations. So they're starting to happen. They had their first arrest and guilty plea, which was Kleinsmith from the FBI. So he's the one that lied in an affidavit to the Supreme Court to get the wiretapping of Trump's team. Remember the wiretapping? Yeah, so he's pleaded guilty, that FBI agent. And Brennan, who was head of the CIA, he was interviewed a day or two ago for 8 hours by Durham, Trump's prosecutor. 8 hours. And Jim Baker, who's the lawyer in the FBI, apparently has turned, and a lot of other people have turned and they're giving evidence. So it's too slow, but there is a plan. I've got my favourite T-shirt on it, my sister bought in America, trust the plan, so darkness to light. That's the motto of Q. The ABC did a big dump on Q. which is happening all around the world, saying that if you like Stuart and you listen to Q, which is US military intelligence, leaking information, a PSYOPs, leaking information to people like me. Millions of people around the world follow it religiously because it lets us work out what's happening 2 or 3 years ahead. I'm a nutcase. That's why I'm wearing the shirt. Bugger the ABC. Darkness to light.
Will it come out before the US election, do you think?
Yeah, some of the... look, the plan's in motion. There's over 100,000 sealed indictments. Tens of thousands of those have been unsealed now. So people are being approached by the FBI in America and around the world, but assets are being seized. So the first thing Trump did was bring in seizure of assets for crimes against humanity, which is child abuse. It's the pedophile networks he's going for. That's the elite's weak spot. They're pedophiles. They worship Satan, they sacrifice kids, and they get to use adrenochrome, which is the adrenaline from the distressed children. All right, but do your own research, don't trust me. It's very unsettling, so probably...
What do you think he's going to release on October 20?
Who knows? There's a whole raft of things he could release. He'll release what will help him get re-elected. At the moment, he's looking for a landslide election. Yes, sir?
Do you think Joe Biden's got any chance of winning the election?
Joe Biden has a snowflake's chance in hell, and he will probably not even be the candidate by then. It's probably more likely to be Michael Obama. But at least she's got balls. That's all I can say. Which is a big change from what we've been, hearing tonight about the established parties. So, God bless the independents and One Nation for that matter. At least they stand up and tell it like it is. Any other questions? I think I've finished my funny presentation.
UAE and Israel. UAE and Israel.
What's UAE?
United Arab Emirates.
Oh, the peace deal? Yeah, we haven't heard much in the media, have we? It's absolutely fundamental. So there's a lot happening with that peace deal. He promised peace. He's been going around the world with a dossier of crimes to each of the world leaders, and this is documented. Remember, he went to Saudi Arabia and he did the sword dance. He went to Japan and he held up the big, trophy for the sumo wrestler. Forbidden City in China. So what he's doing, he spent his first year in government going around working bloody hard and getting agreements from, including the Pope and the Queen. Remember that bizarre thing where the poor old Prince Charles was trailing along behind Trump, inspecting Prince Charles's troops, the Royal Guard. So he's got them to sign off. He said, look, here's the evidence we've got. You're a bunch of pedophiles, you've been drug smuggling, you've been setting up wars. What do you want to do? And they've all come on board, including ScoMo. I won't say anything about him because it's too close to home. But so they're all on board, and he's just rolling out the plan now. But the trouble is, I'll get back to the Middle East in a sec. You've got the deep state, and the deep state are the public servants. So I was a public servant. I was permanent, and it's like Yes Minister. They're the ones that kind of run the country. So it's, Trump's having trouble in Australia and New Zealand, apparently, having phone calls returned and that sort of stuff, go slow. But eventually the Marines will be knocking on these people's doors and arresting them in Australia and New Zealand too. So the Middle East, absolutely critical. He's gone through peace with North Korea, peace with China, believe it or not. There's a deal there, not with the Communist Party, but with Premier Xi. And what was the next one? Iran he's working on now, and Israel he's done. So that then opened up the peace deal. And again, the peace deal is really getting the CIA and Mossad out of those countries, which the leaders are more than happy. Once they're not being blackmailed, through the Epstein stuff, once they're not being blackmailed, they're more than happy to get rid of the CIA out of their countries. So that's it. Yes?
Is it
true all the celebrities are leaving Hollywood at the moment?
Yes, the celebrities, well, they're either housebound and they seem to have a little ring around their ankle, or a big ring around their ankle, and they're saying the most extraordinary things. I must say I have become addicted to watching the Hollywood movie stars make these most bizarre, nonsensical videos.
Yeah, one of them's just recently got Greek citizenship, plus his wife.
Yeah, Tom Hanks, who was recently, we were blessed to have him on the Gold Coast.
With his typewriter, COVID. Do you remember Corona typewriter?
He had his Corona typewriter with him, and he was sending funny messages, and he had some Vegemite toast or something too, didn't he? They work in what's called gematria, which have I got the name right? Which is numbers. So what's happened is Trump appears to be a Mason. So he's got a bloodline, Rh negative bloodline, which goes right back to Christ, and the elites have got a bloodline too, which goes back to Babylonia and the sons of Noah and that. So they try and preserve their bloodlines. Dark magic, light, dark to light. Dark magic, good magic, and good magic can be good. Put a girl in a bikini, I'll buy the car, and that's magic. It's tricking me into buying the car. I didn't need that car, but so that's just very basic magic. Trump. I've forgotten the threat.
You were talking about the
Tom Hanks.
The people moving to Greece, for example.
Yeah.
Avoid issues in America. Is that right?
Yeah, something like that. Anyway, I've forgotten now, but there's two sides anyway. There's a good side and a bad side. The Masons I was talking about. So Trump's a Mason. And then on the other side, you have, as I said, like the Phoenicians, and they've come through, and they keep it within the clan, within the family members, marry within the family, the Phoenicians, and now they're basically married into the royal family. So you've got that one side, the dark side, which have managed to get themselves into positions, heading all the big charities, the big corporations around the world, the politicians, and then you've got the other group, which we hope are the good side, Trump's side of the family, and and he's in a secret society himself, and he's obviously not acting alone. So he's got most of the military behind him, for example, around the world. So that's what's happening at the moment, this big struggle, and they're cleaning out the other side of the family. And usually in history, when they clean out the other side of the family, all the castles get burnt down, and to the seventh generation get slaughtered. So it's quite interesting watching what's happening. Lots of aeroplane crashes and boats crashes and people jumping off balconies all around the world at the moment. It's very, very interesting times. So there's a big clean out. We hope the good guys win, and then it'll open the way up for proper democracy. That's the plan in America, and that's the plan. It has to be all around the world. Otherwise, they'll get back in. They're like what's that, Hydra, isn't it? Hydra with all the heads, and you cut one head off, and Hydra? Yep, I've finished. Not sure if I followed the slides or not, but I had fun.
What's that about Roma Street?
Oh, Roma Street. So our family set up in 1900. Robert Milngau, my great-grandfather, in 1900. He organised the first shipment of wheat from Queensland to England. Not from Australia, but from Queensland. So he was a broker. And then he started packaging the flour and selling it to corner stores around Queensland. They bought a steamship, bought a few trucks, and eventually it became R.M. Gow & Co., which was listed on the stock exchange in the 1940s, and became a very big company in Queensland, one of the biggest employers, and certainly the biggest food company, I suspect. And that's the shop on Roma Street.
That's the old market
See,
on the other side.
Yeah, the bottom right.
So that must be very close.
Yeah, Roma Street Markets, yeah.
Where's the old Redcomb? That'd have to be close to that, wouldn't it?
I've got no idea. I was looking at Google Maps and none of the buildings seem to be there anymore, so I've got no idea.
Redcomb
Looking,
was pretty much there in the
if you can tell me where it is.
60s when I went to school.
Yeah, I remember McDonald and East was there. We used to go shopping around about there.
That's a bit further up.
Oh, it's George Street.
Yeah, not there.
You've still got the same cars?
Do you reckon it's opposite the courts or something like that? Sorry?
It's pretty much opposite
Still
the
got
railway
the same
station.
cars? You've still got the same car.
Yeah, I do. I'm poor now. The family used to be very wealthy. Used to have lovely cars, but mine's a 2000 model. I love it.
Can you talk about the Black Lives Matter organisation? Is that going to be
The which?
brought down? The BLM, Black Lives Matter.
Yeah, look, cultural Marxism, if you've heard Jules' wonderful presentation on cultural Marxism, and hopefully we'll be touring Australia doing it together, Jules, you and me. So, where's David? Sorry, David. Just have to trust me with your wife. Yeah. Anyway, I say to my wife, I never thought I'd be married to a 60-year-old, and I'd look up all my old Facebook girlfriends, but they're all my age now. So anyway, so Black Lives Matter, yeah, cultural Marxism, it's that divide and conquer. So the Phoenicians have been doing it for thousands and thousands of years, and probably even pre-flood, I suspect. Pre-flood, whenever you believe it is, but roughly 10,000 BC. If you read the Bible, it might be 2000 BC, but it doesn't really matter. They've had a lot of practice at regime change, let's call it. So the first thing to do is to divide and conquer. Have daughters hating their dad because I like Trump, and she likes gay rights and stuff. She loves clean energy, even though she's a coal miner now. Figure that one out. Yeah, so they have us divided, and none of us here are psychopaths. Is anyone a psychopath? Yeah, I've got 1, 2, just normal ratio, about 1%. Yeah. None of us have hit our wives or beaten the kids or anything, unless they deserve it, so. It's not us, it's them. They're the ones that take us to war, They're the ones that poison Ipswich. They're the ones that put frigging fluoride in the water. And which councils would be stupid enough to poison their own citizens now when they know it's poisonous, It just goes on and on and on and on. It's not us, it's them. And who's them? It's the global elites. It's the frigging Phoenicians. They're at it. They've been doing it for thousands of years. Just they've got their act together and they're good at doing it. They're good at making money, they're good at control. And from what my sister, who's a researcher, and myself have worked out, most of us use the right brain or the left brain. They don't have any empathy. That's why they're, if you're a psychopath, you're not good at anything, you can remember people's names, politics is the career for you. If you've got empathy, you can't be a banker, you can't be a politician. We're just too nice, just too nice. So that bloodstream, if you like, has just followed them through history, and now they're running everything. That's why everything's so effed up. Yeah. There is a reason. It's quite simple. Once you've got that framework in your head, everything makes sense. All the stupid things in life make sense. They're doing it for a reason. It's part of a plan. They don't want us united. It's like that Ants, the Ants movie where the grasshopper used to come and terrorise the ants until the ants worked out there were 3 billion of them and 4 grasshoppers. So once we get our act together, and part of the waking up thing, I'm just doing my little strip. ABC got furious about this. There was a real trigger. The ABC hated it. What does it mean? Anyone know what it means? Yeah, see, there's quite a few people here that understand that. And that was on the bell in JFK's assassinated yacht, the bell on his yacht. Where we go one, we go all, those letters, and it's now the rallying cry for the Trump movement.
Isn't it the Kennedy gravesite, JFK Kennedy, around it, and there's one that goes through it?
Yeah, there's a queue that goes through Kennedy's gravesite, and there's a strong rumour that his son, John Kennedy Jr., JFK Jr., is going to come back to life. He was killed in a plane crash, and there's a rumour that he might take over from Trump. Hope it comes true. It'll be a good fairy tale story.
The story is that he didn't actually die. Coming back to life is that's happened before. Right?
Any other questions quickly before? I'm sure you want to stay all night, but yes, ma'am.
Question, please. Has ScoMo got a canklet?
Has who?
ScoMo.
Yeah.
Got a canklet. An anklet.
Well, there is a photo that looks a bit baggy, and you know, I better not say anything because I'm a lawyer and there's no freedom of speech in Australia. But for political purposes and entertainment purposes only.
Are you a practising lawyer?
I was a commercial lawyer for 10 years, and a barrister and solicitor in Darwin in Queensland.
Are you registered to practice law
No,
now?
no, I
You
don't do.
don't have any duty to the court. Don't worry about them.
No, but there's no Bill of Rights in Australia, so you can only make political comment, and that's an implied freedom of speech, but it's not an actual freedom of speech. So, you know, that's Australia. It's the deep state.
It's a freedom of speech if you've got the money to defend yourself.
It's the deepest, as you know, Drew Pavlo fighting UQ, unlimited resources, Israel Folau, you know, fighting free speech, ARU, bankrupt but apparently unlimited resources. Any other last question down the back, quick?
Yeah, Stu, you're right on there, right? I do agree with that. That's 100%. But can I just ask this, Mr. Savage? You said straight away at the start, right? You said that Howard, no matter what anyone else did, Howard stuff came down. Like he came down, and everyone was worried about being punished and all that sort of stuff. Whether it's money or actually people do get knocked off. I mean, we know that. We all, you know, I love all you people in this room. Anyway, seriously though, if people don't get in, and if there's still these people like Morrison and these people in, and if they mandate vaccines, really, what are you going to do? What can we do? Because if I don't take it, they're going to split me from my kid. I'm going to not be able to freaking have a place to live. And then eventually they'll round me up. You say that can't happen? That happened to the Jews. That happened to the Jews.
Yeah, it happens in every country.
And that could happen. I see people today carrying on about this 99% recovery rate thing. They believe it. They queue up, they wear masks and stuff. You know, like really? Like we know about it, but yet everyone's doing it. I'm freaking scared. Because if no one changes, if no one gets in, and they bring that mandate in, where am I going to go?
Well, you've got to prepare. You've got to be a prepper.
We have to keep talking to each other, making each other aware, and we have to be united in resistance.
Okay, and that's my last point is this. Out of 2 million people, out of 25 million people that are saying, I'm not going to take that shot, when that pressure comes to walk away from your home, your money, go to the street, there'll only be 10,000 of us left and they'll round us up.
Correct,
Who will help me? Will you all really?
No one, no. You've got to form community. It's a prepping, basic prepping. You've got to have a community group. You've got to be trained in self-defence and have enough food and just hope for the best, really.
In the whole history of humans, there's never been a successful coronavirus type vaccine, right? In the whole history of humans, and they think they can make it in 6 months. My wife's an immunologist. I can tell you that it ain't happening.
How do you get over the media? How do you get this true stuff?
Oh, sorry, we really are very much over time, and it's so very interesting. Perhaps some of us go over to McDonald's and have a cuppa after this, so you're very welcome to join us. And there are just so many subjects that we are all passionate about. This is why we come every month. And so please keep coming, keep talking to each other, and resist any kind of tyranny. Because we're heading for it, I do agree with you, and we must resist. And so, if necessary, okay, let's mobilise, if that comes to that. There is a lot of talk, however, about the alternatives, so I suspect that we may see the end of this vaccine nonsense. Who knows? Anyway, thank you so much for coming. Thank you very much, all of the candidates. See you next month at the Galpa Hotel. Academic Freedom Speech, Professor Peter Rick. Thank you.
Found about the New Zealand and then the fund set up